In the late 18th century, amidst the intellectual fervor of the Enlightenment, the German philosopher Immanuel Kant posed a deceptively simple question. What is the one principle that can guide all moral action? He was dissatisfied with the moral theories of his time. Some argued that morality was about consequences, the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Others rooted it in sentiment, a feeling of sympathy or a divine command. To Kant, these were shaky foundations. Consequences are unpredictable and can justify terrible acts if the outcome is deemed good. Feelings are fickle and subjective. A command from God, while powerful for believers, is not a principle accessible to pure reason. Kant sought something more solid, a moral law that would be as certain and universal as a mathematical truth. He believed he found it not by looking outward at the messy world of results and emotions, but by looking inward at the very structure of human reason itself. His quest was for a principle that would apply to every rational being, without exception, derived from logic itself. This led him to formulate what he called the Categorical Imperative.
To understand this, we must first grasp Kant's crucial distinction between two types of imperatives, or commands of reason. Most of our daily reasoning is governed by hypothetical imperatives. These are conditional commands. They take the form, if you want X, then you must do Y. If you want to be healthy, then you ought to exercise. If you want a promotion, then you should work hard. These are rules of skill and pragmatic advice. They are entirely dependent on your desires and goals. If you don't care about health or promotion, the ought vanishes. They are about means to an end. Kant was interested in something far more profound, an unconditional command, an ought that binds us not because of what we want, but simply because we are rational beings. This is the categorical imperative. It does not say, if you want a good society, don't lie. It says, you must not lie, period. It commands absolutely. This kind of imperative, Kant argued, is the only possible source of moral duty. Morality, for him, begins where our personal desires and calculations of benefit end. So, what is this supreme principle?
Kant offered several formulations, each shedding light on the same core idea from a different angle. The first and most famous is the formula of universal law. It states, act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. A maxim is your personal principle of action, the reason you are doing something. The test is one of logical consistency and universalizability. Before you act, you must ask, could I rationally wish for everyone in a similar situation to act on the same rule I'm about to follow? If the answer is no, then the action is morally forbidden. Kant illustrates this with stark examples. Consider making a false promise. You need money, so you consider borrowing it with a promise to repay, knowing full well you will not. Your maxim is, I will lie and make a false promise when it is to my advantage. Now, universalize that. Imagine a world where everyone adopted this maxim. In such a world, the very institution of promising would collapse. No one would believe a promise was sincere, so no one would accept promises in the first place. Your maxim, when universalized, destroys the very possibility of the action it seeks to employ. It involves a contradiction in conception. You cannot rationally will this universal law because it makes your own intended action impossible. Therefore, making a false promise is morally wrong. But Kant goes further. Some maxims, when universalized, don't lead to a logical contradiction, but to what he calls a contradiction in the will. They create a world you could not rationally desire to live in. His example is a person who refuses to help others in distress. His maxim is, I will never help anyone and will only look out for myself. Can we conceive of a world where this is a universal law? Technically, yes. Such a world is possible, a cold, atomized society. But could you will to live in it? Kant argues no, because as a rational being, you recognize that yourself will inevitably need the help and love of others at some point in your life. To will a law that would deny you that aid is irrational. It contradicts your own unavoidable needs and desires as a human being.
Thus, the duty to help others is not a matter of nice sentiment, but a logical requirement of a consistent moral will. The second major formulation of the categorical imperative is perhaps even more revolutionary, the formula of humanity. It commands, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end in itself. This is the ethical heart of Kant's system. What gives an action moral worth, he argues, is not the outcome, but the respect for rational agency. Human beings, because we possess reason and autonomous will, have an intrinsic, absolute worth, a dignity, not a price. We are not objects to be used. This formulation provides a powerful lens for analyzing ethical dilemmas. Using someone as a mere means is to involve them in your plan without regard for their own consent and rational goals. Coercion, deception, and manipulation are the clearest violations. The con artist uses his victim as a mere means for profit. The slave owner uses the slave as a mere tool. But Kant's phrasing is careful. We cannot treat others merely as a means.
We interact with people as means all the time. A bus driver is a means to my getting to work. A chef is a means to my being fed. This is permissible, even necessary. The moral crime occurs when we treat them merely as that, disregarding the fact that they are also ends in themselves. This requires their rational consent, at least in principle. When I pay the bus driver a fair wage for his voluntary labor, I acknowledge his own ends. When I enslave him, I do not. This leads directly to the third formulation, the idea of the kingdom of ends. Kant invites us to imagine a systematic union of rational beings under common moral laws, a kind of ideal republic where everyone is both the author of the laws and subject to them. In this kingdom, no one gives laws to others that they do not also give to themselves. This is the vision of perfect autonomy. For Kant, freedom is not doing what you want, but giving yourself the law dictated by your own reason, the categorical imperative. When you act morally, you are not obeying an external authority, a threat, or a desire. You are acting as a sovereign legislator in this imagined kingdom, making laws that all rational beings could accept.
This ties the individual's duty to a grand communal ideal of a just universe. It transforms morality from a burden into an act of supreme self-governance and respect for a community of equals. Kant's ethics are famously rigorous, often described as stern and demanding. He prioritizes duty over inclination. An action has moral worth only if it is done from duty, because the law commands it, and not merely in accordance with duty, because it happens to align with your feelings. The shopkeeper who charges a fair price because it's good for business acts in accordance with duty, but lacks moral worth. The same shopkeeper who charges a fair price even when he could easily cheat a child, because it is his duty to be honest, acts from duty, and his action has genuine moral worth. This focus on motive is central. For Kant, the only thing that is good without qualification is a good will, a will that strives to do its duty for duty's sake. Intelligence, courage, even happiness can be used for evil ends. A good will cannot. The power and the challenge of the categorical imperative lie in its uncompromising nature. It provides clear, rational arguments against actions like lying, theft, and murder that don't rely on fluctuating consequences. A lie is wrong, not because it might cause harm, but because it violates the rational order and treats the listener as a mere tool. This absolutism is also its most frequent point of criticism. Can there really be no exceptions? Kant himself famously argued that one must not lie, even to a murderer asking for the location of his intended victim. To lie would violate the duty to truthfulness and make you responsible for any unforeseen consequences. Many find this conclusion morally repugnant, a place where rigid logic seems to override human compassion. Furthermore, critics argue the test of universalization can be manipulated by phrasing the maxim too narrowly. And some ask if an ethic so divorced from human emotion and consequences can truly be a guide for living. Yet, the legacy of the categorical imperative is immense. It is the philosophical bedrock for the modern concept of human rights.
The idea that individuals possess inherent dignity that must be respected, that they are ends in themselves and not property of the state or tools of the collective, finds one of its strongest justifications in Kant's work. Every time we argue that consent is non-negotiable, that persons cannot be sacrificed for the greater good, or that moral principles should apply universally, we are speaking the language Kant helped to define. In a world of moral relativism, utilitarian calculations that trade individual rights for collective benefit, and powerful systems that treat people as data points, Kant's voice remains a formidable and essential call to respect the rational agency within every person. It challenges us to ask not, "What will this get me?" or "How will this make people feel?" but "What principle am I enacting, and could I demand that everyone live by it?" It is an invitation to the difficult, lofty, and ultimately freeing practice of giving the law to oneself.